Good morning. Thank you. So I take it you enjoyed the video? Yeah, good, great. Yeah, me too, me too. It's a new song, just came out a couple months ago or something like that. Wow, I feel like it's been a while since I've been back. It's nice to see you all. We've had a very busy last few weeks, so yeah, it's been crazy. Last week, as you saw in the pictures, we did the Peace Road event, and we went to the site of Martin Luther King Jr.'s monument in City Park, which is actually really quite beautiful and amazing. If you've never been there before, it's really a great place to go visit. There's Martin Luther King Jr., but there's also other notable African American leaders as well, like Harriet Tubman, Frederick Douglass, and different writing about different steps that have been taken in civil rights over the last 150 years. So definitely worth going there. One of the things that I was talking with William Ortman, and he was telling me about this sermon that Dr. King gave many years ago. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. He was a pastor. He must have other messages out there besides the I Have a Dream one, right? So I felt a little bit embarrassed, for one, that I had never been to that monument before, because it's really quite nice. But also that, perhaps like some of you, I've never really listened to any of Dr. King's messages outside of that one, the I Have a Dream message. And so he was telling me that his favorite sermon from Dr. King was called the Drum Major Instinct. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a funny name for a message. But I went online and I listened to it. There's audio and there's a transcript of it. And I was really moved by the message. It's such a great message. If you haven't heard it before, or read it before, I'd recommend definitely going and doing that. So I was inspired to kind of craft the message somewhat loosely based off of his message. So I want to give credit where credit is due. The message that I'm going to give is very much based off of Dr. King's message that he gave many years ago. And of course, his message is much better. But there was just some points of it that I just love so much, and I wanted to try to share some of those things with you. So his message was based off of Mark chapter 10 in the Bible. And I'm going to start off just by reading a little bit of that. Dang it. Okay. This is a section called The Request of James and John. So then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. Teacher, they said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. I've read this before, but somehow it really struck me. Like, what a strange thing to say. Like, if my kids came to me and they said, Dad, I want you to do whatever I'm about to ask you to do. I'd be like, no. But let me hear what you have to say anyway. Anyway, Jesus I think he was humoring them. I don't know if this was like a translation thing. It just seems like such an odd thing to say. If they really meant it, maybe they just were that much out of tune with where Jesus was really at. But anyway, he said, we want you to do for us whatever we ask. And Jesus said, what do you want me to do for you? They replied, let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory. So one of the things that you may or may not know is that when Jesus came, at that time, this concept of the Messiah, the Israelites, the Jews, were expecting the Messiah to come as a literal king. They were expecting him to come, become the king of the Jews, and basically take them out of oppression because they were under Roman rule at that time. They had to pay taxes to the Romans. They were subject to what the Romans wanted them to do and how they were supposed to live, and they didn't like that. I don't think anyone does. And they were expecting that the Messiah would come and kind of free them from this situation and become the literal king, not just like a spiritual king or a figurative king. And so perhaps they were thinking that when Jesus would become the king, that he would need someone to represent him at his left and right side. Maybe at that time that was a very common thing, I mean, we don't live so much in the day of like monarchies and kingships so much, but Yeah, they said, let one of us sit at your right and let one of us sit at your left in your glory. And Jesus said, you don't know what you are asking. Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with? We can, they said. Jesus said to them, you will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those whom they have been prepared. So, one of the things that I think is a very universal truth for all people is that all human beings, regardless of our age or our position or situation in life, we're all looking for belonging. We're all looking for praise. We're all looking for acceptance. And I think to some degree, we're also looking for our value. Like, what is the value of my life? What is the value of myself as a human being? And sometimes we look for that value in things like our accomplishments, our education level, the title that we have, maybe before our name or after our name. You can call it whatever you want. Success, greatness. We're talking about greatness today, right? People are looking for, where can my life have meaning? And I think on maybe a more deeper level, we're also looking for, what is my place with God? What is my place in the larger scheme of things? What is my value? Am I accepted by God? Does God really actually love me? I think these are questions that we don't necessarily ask ourselves all the time, because those are tough questions to ask, but maybe we wonder sometimes, maybe even subconsciously. For some people, greatness is, it can look like many different things. It can be a title, it can be it can be a position, maybe a level of stature. It could be the amount of money that we have, or how nice our house is, or how nice our car is. It could be how attractive I am, how good I look to the opposite sex. In the case of James and John, they were seeking greatness in the position of being on the left and the right hand of Jesus. But Jesus said that even if you, when he says to drink the cup I drink and be baptized, the baptism I'm baptized with, I kind of assume that Jesus is saying to live the way I've lived. I'm not sure if that's completely correct. But he says, even if you live the way I lived, this position is not mine to give you. It's not up for grabs. It's not for sale, because of your loyalty or because of your works or something like that, or because you come to me in confidence. It's not up for grabs. It's God's positions to give to whom he has prepared those positions for. So moving on, word gets out. The other disciples find out that what James and John tried to do, I assume, in private. And it goes, when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant. They were upset with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, right? Like they push their position onto them. And their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So in this chapter, Jesus talks about what it means to be great. He kind of redefines greatness in a way, and what it means to be a leader. He says that the Gentiles, the rulers of the Gentiles, they lord it over them. They use their authority, they use their position in some ways maybe to make other people feel smaller, or to show them that you're less than me. But Jesus said we are not like that. And I think that that message is not just for the disciples. That message is for us, who are disciples in our own way, in our own right. It's a good lesson to take to heart. I think that I personally believe that this is really true, whether you're a parent or whether you're a boss or a pastor or somebody who maybe other people look up to, that this is something to take to heart. That there's no such thing as a title without a responsibility. And there's no such thing as a leader who doesn't get their hands dirty and serve the needs or the people and or the people that they're responsible for. That is what leadership is. And I think that we're starting to kind of come to understand that in today's day and age, 2,000 years later. Jesus was maybe ahead of his time. I remember many years ago when we first moved here, we had these bulletins, and we printed them out every week. And the bulletin would have the titles of everybody who was in charge of even though we're a small church, it was like 20 leaders of different ministries. And I always thought that was very interesting, because that could be like a one-person ministry or a one-person position, yet there was a leader of it with a title. And over the years, of course we don't do that anymore, but over the years, I really felt that it's really important that we de-emphasize things like titles, because although titles are useful in some way, they don't define like my value or my worth or my greatness. Sometimes people look to titles to define who they are. I have this title, I have that title, I'm part of this organization, I'm part of that organization, I'm the head of the council, I'm the head of this thing or whatever. But I'm more worried about how much are you willing to serve? How much are you willing to get your hands dirty? How much are you willing to listen to someone while they tell you like all your faults and your problems? That's, in my mind, a more important trait to have. So I can't do justice to Dr. King's message. It was really good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to spend a little bit of time just kind of reading what he wrote, what he said in his sermon 50 years ago. So this is Dr. King's words. He said, "One would have thought that Jesus would have condemned them. One would have thought that Jesus would have said, 'You are out of your place. You are selfish. Why would you raise such a question?'" Right? So he's talking about James and John. Why are you asking to be on the left and right hand of Jesus? But then he says, but that isn't what Jesus did. He did something altogether different. He said in substance, "Oh, I see. You want to be first. You want to be great. You want to be important. You want to be significant. Well, you ought to be. If you're going to be my disciple, you must be." But he reordered priorities, and he said, yes, don't give up on this instinct. It's a good instinct if you use it right. It's a good instinct if you don't distort it and pervert it. Don't give it up. Don't give up that desire to be great. Keep feeling the need for being important. Keep feeling the need for being first. But I want you to be first in love. I want you to be first in moral excellence. I want you to be first in generosity. That is what I want you to do. And he transformed the situation by giving a new definition of greatness. And you know how he said it? He said, "Now, brethren, I can't give you greatness, and really I can't make you first." This is what Jesus said to James and John. You must earn it. True greatness comes not by favoritism, but by fitness. And the right hand and the left are not mine to give. They belong to those who are prepared. So Jesus gave us a new norm of greatness. If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant. That's a new definition of greatness. And this morning, the thing that I like about it, by giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great. Everybody. Because everybody can serve. You don't have to have a college degree to serve. You don't have to make your subject and your verb agree to serve. You don't have to know about Plato and Aristotle to serve. You don't have to know Einstein's theory of relativity to serve. You don't have to know the second theory of thermodynamics and physics to serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant. If any of you are around when I have to meet my day, and this is, by the way, not too long before Dr. King was assassinated, I don't want a long funeral. And if you get somebody to deliver the eulogy, tell them not to talk too long. And every now and then, I wonder what I want them to say. Tell them not to mention that I have a Nobel Peace Prize. That isn't important. Tell them not to mention that I have 300 or 400 other awards. That's not important. Tell them not to mention where I went to school. I'd like somebody to mention that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to give his life serving others. Does this sound like somebody we know? Do you know our founder, Reverend Moon, said at one point that Dr. King was the greatest saint of the 20th century. Where am I? I'd like for somebody to say that day that Martin Luther King Jr. tried to love somebody. I want you to say that day that I tried to be right on the war question. I want you to be able to say that day that I did try to feed the hungry. And I want you to be able to say that day that I did try in my life to clothe those who were naked. I want you to say on that day that I did try in my life to visit those who were in prison. I want you to say that I tried to love and serve humanity. Yes, if you want to say that I was a drum major, by the way, drum major, if you don't know what a drum major is, it's like the person who leads like the parades and the marching bands down the street. I didn't know what one was, but now I know. Say that I was a drum major for justice. Say that I was a drum major for peace. I was a drum major for righteousness, and all the other shallow things will not matter. I won't leave any money. I won't have any money to leave behind. I won't have the fine and luxurious things of life to leave behind, but I just want to leave a committed life behind, and that's all I want to say. So that's the end of Dr. King's message, but I would encourage you, if you felt inspired by that, please go and read or listen. They have the audio recording online. You can listen to it. It's so great. But what I really felt from his message was so much resonance in so many ways. In many ways, the way I think my wife and I, we want to live our life, and the way our true parents live their life, and the way that they've asked us to live our life. It's so similar in so many ways. And I think that while we're chasing greatness in our life, whatever that may look like, let's remind ourselves that true greatness comes from being a servant to others. And I think that one of the greatest things that we can do in our life, as we're trying to figure out what we want, is to find something where there's a need that I can do something about. I mean, that's going to look different for every person. Everyone has different gifts and abilities, and many people have told me that they don't think they have any, but I believe everyone has something. And there are so many problems in the world, and there's so many needs in the world, and just to find something where you can look at that problem and think, I can do something about that. I, in my life, can serve that need, or to serve that person. I can make a difference in that person's life, or I can make a difference in this situation. I can serve that need. And I think that if you can do that, if you can invest into that and give yourself for that, that's greatness according to Jesus and according to Dr. King, and I think all great people. So that's basically the message that I have for today. Please join me in prayer. Dearest Heavenly Parent, we're so grateful for every single person in the room this morning and everyone who couldn't be here. We are so humbled by the never-ending grace and love and forgiveness that you have for each and every single one of us. You see our faults, but you also see our potentials and our talents and what we could be if we really applied ourselves. And I pray that we can really take Jesus' words to heart. It's humbling to think that even 2,000 years later, we still don't understand what Jesus was trying to say many times when he was saying that, the first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And if you want to be great, you will be a servant to others. I pray that we can take the message to heart for ourselves as we seek for different goals in our lives. I hope that we can never lose sight and forget about the needs that exist and the ways in which maybe we could serve that need, or we could serve others, or we could help. Maybe we can help someone else who is trying to serve that need. Whatever it may look like, whatever it is, Heavenly Parent, we know that it's really easy to just get caught up in our lives, maybe the drama or the busyness of our schedules. But we know that we know, and you know that we know that life isn't just about those things. Please guide us, Heavenly Parent, and our families, ourselves, our individuals, our whole community, Heavenly Parent, please guide us. We pray that, as time goes and this world goes through many different transitions and changes, please help us to always be humble. Please help us to always strive to become better. And please help us to guide us to be the best that we can be for you, to bring you hope and inspiration and love. And I offer this prayer in my name, Michael and Adonia Hendrick, a blessed Central family. Amen and adieu. Thank you very much.